Hey there. So while I'm starting seeds today, I thought that we would talk about companion planting, specifically to the seeds that I'm starting. But here's the thing. When I first heard about companion planting, I thought it was like lists that I had to memorize, right? Like if I'm growing tomatoes, I have to grow these certain plants next to it. Like carrots and tomatoes is one of the famous ones that people think about. But the fact of the matter is that companion planting is not about memorizing a list. It's about understanding what your plants need. So we're going to talk about some of the stuff that I'm growing and what its needs are and how I figure out what to grow along with it. You might already know that I use painter's tape now as my plant labels. And I've already labeled my tray before I got started, so just so you can see what we're doing here. I put the date on the end of the tray, and then on this side, I put the varieties. And I am starting today in soil blocks that I've just made. I have a 2-inch soil blocker, and my 10 by 20 tray can fit 10 blocks across and 5 deep. I have to cram an extra row in the back to get my 5th row because my blocker is 4. And what I'm going to be doing is starting, it's tomatoes and peppers today, largest tomatoes and hottest peppers that are going to go onto a heat mat once we get inside. So I'm going to do 4 of the food crop that I'm growing and then a companion along the back. Alrighty? That's going to be our basic setup for the day. By the way, I'm Mikair. This is More Prana Gardens. I am gardening in North Texas, which explains no sleeves today. I do have to wrap the hen house this week because we're expecting ice and 14 degrees. So yeah, yay Texas. So I'm going to tell you what I'm planting like a couple at a time so I don't have to interrupt the companion story as we go as often. So the first 3 tomatoes that I'm going to be starting are Paul Robeson. That one's new to me. Black from Tula is new to me, and Black Crim is one of my favorites. So these are some dark varieties. When you grow your tomatoes, if the stems and the veins and the leaves turn like dark blue or purple, that can be an indication that you have a deficiency. And at the moment, I forget which one it is, but it's easy to search. But some of your darker varieties of tomatoes will get a dark vein in the leaves and a dark stem. Blueberries, which is a type of cherry tomato, definitely has a very dark stem and veins. So be aware if you are growing some varieties with lots of anthocyanin, that might happen. All right, so companions. A really, really famous companion that a lot of people know about is the 3 sisters. Sorry. I used to be really afraid of bees, and I've worked on it. I actually had a bee garden for a while that I would sit in to like desensitize myself to my fear of bees, but when they're right here, I still get a little, yeah, okay. So, 3 sisters is one that a lot of people know about, and it's not strict that it has to be corn and a climbing bean and a squash. It's that it is something that acts as a support and something that covers the ground and something that gives nitrogen to the thing that acts as the support. So the corn needs a lot of nitrogen and the beans give nitrogen. The beans need something to climb, and so they climb the corn. So the corn could be replaced with sunflowers if you wanted to, or partially replaced with sunflowers. Both of those don't want a lot of weeds in their area, so the squash creates the ground cover that blocks out the weeds, and because the corn likes a lot of water, ground cover from the squash leaves is going to help keep the ground shaded, not only blocking out weeds, but also keeping the water in the soil from evaporating as fast. And then it also appreciates the nitrogen from the beans. Hello, baby chicken. So it's not that it has to be those specific, like that squash could be a pumpkin or melons or anything, nasturtiums, strawberries, that would cover the ground sufficiently to help give those benefits. For such big tomatoes, these have tiny little seeds. I don't always cover my seeds right away when I'm planting. That way, if I forget where I was, I can look and make sure that I have seeds in the holes. Hi, bearded lady. Yes, you pretty chicken. Hey, I almost forgot to ask you, if you are helped by my videos, if you've been around before, would you please hit subscribe? It really helps YouTube know that you want more of my content. And if you are subscribed, but it's not coming up in your feed a whole lot, if you ring that little bell, then you'll get a notification. Alrighty? Okay, thanks. Since I'm doing tomatoes and peppers today, and the rest of what I need to start today is more tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, I looked up the bugs that prey on those plants. I came up with a pretty good list, and I'm going to read a little bit of it to you just to make sure we get it all. So between tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, the major predators are going to be cutworms, armyworms, fruit worms, cornworms, which are cousins to fruit worms, hornworms. All of those are caterpillars. And then aphids, flea beetles, white flies, potato beetles, stink bugs, leaf-footed bugs, spider mites, slugs, slugs, and snails. So like I mentioned, a lot of those are caterpillars. So all caterpillars are susceptible to parasitic wasps. And the gory way that works is that the parasitic wasps lay their eggs in the caterpillar, and then the little babies burst out, and it's this whole like alien type deal going on. My feet are in ants, by the way. That's why you keep seeing my knees pop up. Anything that grows an umbrella-shaped flower like dill, fennel, carrots flower in their second year. If you plant a carrot top, it will make the flower but not a new carrot. And yarrow and some other stuff. They all attract the parasitic wasps that attack the caterpillars that attack tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and other things. So I'm going to start some. This is the plain white yarrow. This is the one that's best for medicine. And they have really fine seeds, so I'm not going to try to like pop them out into my hand and do it that way. And then the next tomatoes that we do are going to be pineapple tomato. This is new to me. And Kellogg's breakfast tomato is also new to me. And these are supposed to get 2 pounds. That's wild. And then Brad's atomic grape. I have a love-hate relationship with Brad's. As you can see, this is not like photoshopped or color corrected or anything. This is really what they look like. They're beautiful. They're really tasty. And the plant is a pain in the booty. It wants heat to germinate. So this is a tray that's going on a heat mat. Before it gets planted out into the garden, the plant looks sickly and awful. I actually emailed the seed seller about it last year, and they're like, you're doing everything right. It's just a weird, sensitive plant. It'll be okay. So that's what we're doing. I am going to be flipping back and forth a little bit, talking about companions and about these plants themselves and what I'm doing in the garden. I'm starting 4 of each of these because I'm planning to grow 2. That gives me 1 to fail, 1 to give away, and 2 to grow. And if they all take, then, you know, I have 2 to give away, or 1 to give away and 1 to sell, or I make more garden space and grow even more. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I would rather get them started and have too many plants later than get down to time to plant them out and not have enough. So I'm going to over prepare. I'm going to go that direction. Look, I found Wasabi. This is Wasabi. She was in the potted garden just now, which was right behind me, where she is not supposed to be. Oh, baby girl, I play with your waddles. Waddle, waddle, waddle. Waddle, waddle, waddle. Yes, you pretty chicken. Okay, go back in your yard. I know. Thank you for coming to see me. Bye. So yeah, that was Wasabi. She is a spicy little chicken. With my brads, because they are so touchy, and because I know I have a second pack, I'm gonna put 2 in each hole. I'm not doing this with all my tomatoes because I am planting enough to be sure, but these are just so... That's my best description of them. I have another list. Okay, so I read you the list of bugs that attack these plants. So here's some bugs that attack those bugs, aside from parasitic wasps. So ground beetles, taconid flies, which are going to have the same list of attracted plants as the parasitic wasps, big-eyed bugs, minute pirate bugs, ladybugs, lacewings, both the mature lacewings and their larvae, and assassin bugs. Now, if you have assassin bugs, you're going to want to stay away from them. They, if they bite you, it does something. It doesn't just hurt. I forget what all it does. It hasn't happened to me. I've avoided them. Yeah, don't get bit by them. It's bad. So in addition to the things with the umbrella-shaped flowers, which attract our parasitic wasps and our taconid flies, those plants are also going to attract a lot of the other bugs. But for like the ground beetles and some other stuff, we want to have some perennial plants and perennial flowers for them to hang out in our garden during the times that they're not really active, like in winter. And also mulch allows them to like nestle in and live in our gardens. We can plant, as I mentioned, dill, fennel, cilantro, yarrow, cosmos, alliums. Alliums are your chives, your onions. There are also flowers that aren't edible or that aren't eaten that are called allium flowers. Zinnias, thyme, goldenrod, sunflowers, spearmint, alfalfa, marigolds, garlic. So things that offer a lot of scent confusion really help. I shared my shame with you that I had 3 packets of chives. So I'm going to start some chives as companions. And I'm not doing garlic chives on this because garlic chives will spread and they are really hard to get rid of. And I don't necessarily want that anywhere except in an enclosed area. My garlic chives grow over here in a place that has concrete on the other side. So these are just going to be regular onion chives. And I'll just make like 3 little clumps for those. And then I'll go through my last 4 because I only have 4 rows left, or columns left. I'm doing West Indies Red Habanero again. I did these last year and I really, really liked them. They are pretty hot. They're not crazy hot. And I dehydrated a lot of them because I couldn't eat them fast enough. And like one habanero broken up into refried beans or taco mix or whatever is really good. I've been enjoying them that way. Doing Peter peppers. I'm not going to explain this to you. There are search engines. Orange spice jalapeno. I did orange spice and lemon spice last year along with early hots. And I'm doing those all again. And I have another jalapeno on the way that I am going to be opening for y'all soon. And then chili de árbol. When you get like red pepper flake, it's usually this. So we're going to do these at the request of one of my roommates. In addition to pest control, we can choose our companions according to other needs of our plants. All of these plants are going to need pollinators. They're going to need bees and things to come and move their pollen from plant to plant or from flower to flower. So we want to attract bees, and parasitic wasps help with that, and flies help with that, and all sorts of other things. So we're going to do, I don't have them here with me right now, but like borage, coreopsis, basils. I do have a basil in this stack. We're going to do some things to attract the pollinators. Another thing that we look at is, like we talked about with the three sisters, is ground cover. So you can mulch heavily for sure. That's one way to get ground cover. Or we can plant nasturtiums, would be a really good one. I wouldn't put like a squash type plant or I wouldn't put one of those at the base of these because they want so many nutrients, but nasturtiums are a ground cover that also fix nitrogen as long as you're pulling some of the leaves and flowers, which I eat them, so I will. And if I'm picking tomatoes, why not pick some nasturtiums to go with them? They're pretty delicious that way. And then shade is something that you might not think about. And I did an experiment in 2020. I put a row of okra in front of, like a good distance in front of, 4 or 5 feet in front of my tomatoes on the afternoon sun side. And then in 2021, just to comparison test, I didn't do it. Now, 2021 was a little warmer, but definitely I had more consistent production through the hot months in 2020 when I had that shield of the okras blocking the afternoon sun from my tomatoes. So I will be doing that again this year. I'm going to put the okra back over there. I got halfway through July and wanted to kick myself for not doing it. But, you know, I was running a trial. Now I know. I'm using okra because they grow nice and wide. A multi-stemmed sunflower would do the same thing. Anything big, zinnias might help, but make sure that it's only on the afternoon sun side and that you're not like blocking their sun all day long. That's what happened with my cherry tomatoes that were back in the corner behind the oak tree, and they didn't do anything until the fall, and they just didn't get enough light to grow fast. And then really the last thing to consider when you're doing companion planting is nutrients. It's not that we're necessarily always planting to add nutrients, like with the nasturtium adding nitrogen directly at the same time as the anchor plant, the plant that we're trying to support, is there. We can also add nutrients beforehand. So we have a really hard freeze coming this week, but very shortly I will be putting cover crop everywhere that I'm going to grow a garden. And I did a little bit in the fall, and then we had a like surprise 18 with no soft frosts first, and it got them all. So I'm going to redo that, but when I cut those down, those will fix nitrogen and help boost. And in that case, the cover crop wouldn't be a direct companion in the stacking of time, but it'll be a succession. All right, so I did the white yarrow and then the chives, and then I'm gonna do Bouquet Dill, which doesn't give you a lot of flavoring, but it gives you a lot of flowers. Bouquet Dill is often grown by flower farmers to add filler. So this one is actually going to be perfect for trying to attract the parasitic wasps and stuff like that, because it's going to produce more flowers. But this isn't the one that I'm going to go to when I want to make like garlic dill potatoes. There are other dills that I will be using for those. And you might notice that I did not label my companions that I'm planting on this side, and that's just because the difference is going to be so obvious. Like yarrow, chive, dill, and basil don't look anything alike. This is a new basil that came out last year. It's African Newnham basil, and it likes heat, and it's a slow grower. Actually, when I emailed the company about the Brad's Atomic Grape, I asked them about this as well, and that was a lot of seeds, but it's okay. So this one tastes like basil and oregano mixed. All right, so I've given you idea of what we kind of use for companions. I'm just going to cover over my seeds here. I'm going to tell you how to figure it all out. What I did, and I looked up a lot. I spent like a couple of hours this weekend looking up everything. But you can look up like, what are the predators of a tomato plant? Write those down. Say hornworm is one that you came up with. Then you can look up what are the natural predators of a hornworm. And then you'll see parasitic wasps and spiders and whatnot. And then you look up what attracts parasitic wasps, and then it'll tell you dill, and all this good stuff. You can do that with each thing that you need. And then you can look up like watering needs. Tomatoes need even water. They don't want a big flush of water all at one time. That makes them split. If you get splitty tomatoes, that's going to be the reason most likely. And that can happen because it rains. Most of the time in garden groups, when people are like, oh my goodness, my tomatoes are splitting, why? And they're in North Texas, I'm like, you got that rain yesterday? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, your tomatoes split overnight? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, it was the rain, you're fine, you didn't do anything wrong. If it's something that needs even moisture, you're gonna wanna mulch and you're gonna wanna keep the ground covered. Yarrow and dill and basil are gonna create some shade. They are gonna create some ground cover. They're not gonna draw so much water that they take water away from the tomatoes. So they're gonna help with that evenness. This is not a companion plant thing, but this is an even watering thing, and I'm gonna point it out right now. We're gonna get clear on this now because, oh my goodness, gardening groups and blossom end rot. So blossom end rot is when the blossom end, or the very bottom of the tomato, where it has that like little bump or pucker or whatever that variety of tomato does, starts to get soft and rotty. Blossom end rot is caused by a lack of your tomato plant taking up calcium. Here is the thing. Listen, please listen. Don't put yourself through this. People think that blossom end rot means that you need to rush out there and somehow supplement the calcium in your garden. That might be true if all your tomatoes are doing it all the time, but the more likely cause is that your ground is too wet or too dry, which prevents your tomatoes from being able to take up their nutrients, and calcium is the first one that's gonna show up. If you have those soft spots someplace else on your tomatoes, it is not blossom end rot. That's another thing that I see all the time in gardening groups. Somebody will have a big spot on the side of their tomato. It's all soft and mushy and turning funny colors, and everybody's like, blossom end rot. And I'm like, yeah, that's not the blossom end, y'all. That could be stink bug damage. That could be a number of other things. And there's a lot of websites out there that have like pictures of tomatoes with different weirdnesses, and you can look them up. So just be aware, if you get blossom end rot and it's only where the ground is wettest, or it's only after your tomatoes have like a big drench of rain, it's not that you need to put calcium in your soil, it's that you need to balance the water in your soil. Use mycorrhizal fungi and it will help with that. I have mycorrhizal fungi in this seed starting mix, and I will be putting it into the potting holes when I plant out. Okay, so companions. You're looking for what attacks your plant. What attacks the thing that attacks your plant? What repels the thing that attacks your plant? Which insects does your plant need, and what attracts those? Which plants are going to create ground cover or nutrients or shade as your plant may need? Most of the time you can handle that with plants with flowers and plants with tiny flowers. Pretty much a general rule of thumb. I will be planting a lot of forage back there to attract bees. I'm gonna throw some sunflowers all over the yard to attract everything. And I'd just like to address that chainsaw real quick. I've been promising y'all that I would order a new microphone when I hit 100 subscribers. I got notice that it is being packed and put in the mail. Well, it's being packed today. It'll get in the mail tomorrow, I'm sure. And I will have that new microphone this week, which should really help with noises like that. I do apologize for that. So thank you for starting seeds with me. Put the starting seeds and soil blocks up here. And other than that, I'll see you soon. Later, y'all.